Welcome to the Weekly Bark, where ordinary people are talking about extraordinary things. Sit back and enjoy the ride. The Weekly Bark. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Weekly Bark. My name's Jesse, and I am your host. And I am oh man, I'm ready for summer. The lightning bugs have finally come out, man. The cicadas are chirping in the trees. It has just been a cacophony of music and insects, but the lightning bugs, I miss them. And they were supposed to come out a couple of weeks ago, and I think the cicadas just probably made them hide. But they are all out in full force tonight. Tonight was like the first night in my yard where they were out and about. We saw them downtown on the square a couple of nights ago, but tonight they're in our neighborhood. And I'll tell you what, man, there is nothing finer than seeing that green yellow glow of their belly. I have a funny story about that. When my first time I had ever seen lightning bugs was here in Tennessee. I was stationed at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, but Tennessee. Uh, and my very first night I was here, I got in late and they didn't know what to do to process me. And it was like on a Friday or a Saturday or something. And so they said, "Oh, you can come in and here's some barracks rooms you're going to stay in until we can get you some orders to where you're going to go." And they said, the mess hall's already closed. So if you're hungry, you're going to have to walk up to the PX and get something to eat. And I said, "All right." So I walked over to the PX, and that's where they have like the little food court and the store where you can shop, like a mall on a military base. So I go down there and I eat some pizza, and I'm walking back, and it's getting dusk. And as I'm walking back, I start seeing these lights, flashing in my eyes. And I'm like, man, what am I sick? Did I eat some bad pizza? And then I see one of those go off, and then I see the bug, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a lightning bug. I had never seen a lightning bug before. Only at Disneyland on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, I had seen them there, and those are fake. But this is the first time I had ever seen them, and I was just so awestruck by seeing these things for that very first time in real life. And one of the things that I love about living where I live is now we get them every summer, and a lot of people take them for granted. But if I can figure out a way to get even more in my yard, I would, that's one insect I would just like to have more and more of. As we're getting to this time of the year though, man, it's just been, I've been feeling, I don't know. I'm just like, I'm like a little overwhelmed by the amount of things that I need to do. And simultaneously, I feel very underwhelmed with what I actually get done. It leads to this weird place of frustration where I look at all the things that I need to do, and then I kind of get like anesthetized or frozen to where I can't do any of them. And I got this like long list of things that I'm itching to accomplish, but somehow I end up doing none of them. It's like, why bother? I mean, am I ever going to get through all this? And so then I try to pep talk myself. Okay, you got this. Just focus one thing at a time. Just one thing at a time. Small victories. You can do this. And then it's like, when I get something done, I'm like, that wasn't quite what I had in mind. I didn't get the sense of fulfillment that I thought I would. Well, anyway, tonight, actually, it wasn't tonight. It was a couple of weeks ago now. We had a small group from church, and we delved into this concept of compassion that particular night. And I'm gonna the guy we're using as kind of the video series we're following is from Louisville, Kentucky, and I can't remember the name of his name. It's Kyle something. Hang on. His name's Kyle Idleman, and he wrote a book called Not a Fan. He's pastor of a big church up there in Louisville, Kentucky. And so these ideas, I think, were coming out of that small group meeting where we were listening to a video by him. And basically so as we were talking about it, this idea of compassion, it struck a chord with me. And so they broke it down like you need three key components to have true compassion, right? Because compassion's like a verb, it's an action. You can't just do it. And so the first component that you've got to have to exercise true compassion for somebody is to acknowledge their existence, to give them humanity. It's so easy for us to get caught up in our own world, oblivious to those around us. We all talked about how we like to slap in our AirPods or put on some headphones when we're out in public, and that helps us to avoid having to interact with people as we go about our day. We can shut ourselves off. I mean, how many times are you standing in a line at a checkout in a grocery store and everybody's looking at their phone because they don't want to look at each other, right? And pretending like we got something to do. And it's like we're essentially saying, I don't see you. I don't want to see you, because acknowledging them then comes with some sense of social responsibility, or at the very least recognition of our shared humanity, right? So instead we opt for the easy way out by immersing ourselves into a podcast or music, and then by doing that we kind of reaffirm our own sense of self-worth and engage our intellect, all while avoiding the discomfort of connecting to real people around us. And so, in order to have compassion, the first thing we need to do is stop that and actually see people and acknowledge them. The second aspect of compassion is to truly empathize with others. It's about actively tuning into what they're experiencing, acknowledging their emotions, and showing real, genuine concern. When you see somebody going through a tough time, don't just brush it off. Take a moment, connect with them, ask them how they're feeling, how they're doing, and really listen and to their response. And finally, the third component of compassion is taking action. Once you've recognized someone's pain or fear, it's not enough to just sympathize with them. You have to do something. And so, whether it's offering just a listening ear or a helping hand or simply just being there for support, sometimes all people want you to do is just listen to them. Compassion, compassionate actions is what truly makes a difference. Compassion isn't a one-dimensional trait. It's a holistic approach that requires all three of those components working together. If we neglect any one of these aspects of compassion, we fall short in the compassion department. So, like, for instance, imagine seeing someone in need, but then if you feel indifferent towards their plight and failing to take action, well, that's not compassion, that's apathy. Similarly, if we're oblivious to the struggles of others, we can't possibly empathize with them or offer any meaningful assistance. And even if we do recognize someone's pain and genuinely empathize with them, but we fail to do anything to take action, we're essentially turning our backs on them and offering no real help or support. That's what it meant in the book of James, where James writes in his epistle, faith without works is dead. This is what he's talking about. He says this: what good is it, my brothers, if someone says they have faith but does not have works? Can faith save him? If a brother or a sister is poorly clothed or lacking in daily food, and one of you says to them, go in peace, be warm, be filled, without giving them the things they need for the body, what good is that? And you can find that in James chapter 2, verses 14 through 16. In today's world, where compassion feels as scarce as can be, it's crucial to remember the significance of these three components and to strive to embody them with our interactions with others. We often view other people through these distorted lenses, sometimes as mere abstractions or adversaries or embodiments of an ideology of some sort, like whatever that ideology happens to be, or even maybe just a physical body. And we fail to see the humanity in others, to recognize each person as a unique reflection of the divine. I mean, how many times have you heard people say, I hate people, I can't stand them? Well, that's a problem of us, not them. And we need to recognize people as the reflection of the divine. To me, it's sad to think about how many times we shy away from sharing our faith or spreading a message of the gospel because we fear being perceived as odd or judgmental. We're afraid of being labeled as one of those weird Christians, or nowadays it's kind of cool to hate on Christians and associate us with some sort of political cult. But in doing so, we miss an opportunity to connect with people on a deeper level. We need to be vocal about who we are and really be getting the love of Christ into the world, because people are making up what they think Christianity is based on some of the vocal minorities and perspectives on Christianity. And we need to take it to the streets as loudly and proudly as possible. Otherwise, other people will make up what they think it is, and eventually we'll lose our freedom to be what we are. Our fear in being associated as the weird Christians is actually making us miss opportunities to connect on others on a much deeper level and to share the love and hope that faith brings. It's absolutely crucial that we actively share our faith, because we're living in a world that's deeply broken, lonely, and misguided. Society bombards us with misleading messages about where true happiness lies. It suggests that happiness can be found in our wealth, in our career success, in material possessions, in substance abuse, and pursuing various forms of hedonism or sensuality. But the reality is far from that. None of those external factors can truly fulfill us for any lasting period of time or bring any lasting happiness. You might have fun for a minute, and it may give you a sense of purpose for a time, but at the end of our life, those things become meaningless. Genuine happiness stems from from life, life that's grounded in the hope of God. This is where we find our center and purpose in connection with something greater than ourselves. It's about embracing a relationship with God and aligning our lives with his teachings. That's the essence of the gospel of Jesus Christ, finding true happiness through a spiritually centered life and deep connection with God. It is a message of hope and fulfillment that stands in stark contrast to the empty promises of the world. Being a Christian doesn't make you a good person. Being a Christian makes you want to be a better person. That's what being a Christian is. Not because our salvation rests in the works of being a good person, but because through the gift of grace that we received, we now desire to be gracious to others. God gave us a new heart and a mind in the born again experience. And it's that we want to share. And without that, none of these other things will produce any happiness. And the more we don't tell people about the gospel, the less compassionate we are towards our neighbors and our friends. It's not that we need to tell them that they are going to hell. That's not the point. The Bible says that they're already condemned at birth. And so that's what John 3:17 through 20 talks about. Everybody talks about John 3:16, for God so loved the world. But it goes on to say, for God did not send his son into the world to condemn the world, but not in order the world might be saved through him. Whoever believes in him is not condemned, but whoever does not believe is condemned already. And what's that mean? Because that sounds pretty harsh. Well, it goes on to say, because he has not believed in the name of the only Son of God, this is the judgment, that the light has come into the world and people love darkness rather than the light because their works were evil. Well, that's easy to understand. When we're doing things we know we ought not to do, we don't want anybody to see it, so we want to do it in the dark. We don't want a light exposed on that, so we have to make a change. It's easy for us to point out the flaws of others while dismissing or hiding from our own. It goes on that for everyone who does wicked things hates the light and does not come into the light, lest his works be exposed. Then once the works are exposed, we are under an obligation to renounce those works. In Romans chapter 1, it says it like this, and since they did not see fit to acknowledge God, God gave them up to a debased mind to do what ought not to be done. They were filled with all manner of unrighteousness, evil, covetousness, and malice. They are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, maliciousness. They are gossips, slanderers, haters of God, insolent, haughty, boastful, inventors of evil, disobedient to parents, foolish, faithless, heartless, and ruthless. Though they know God's righteous decree that those who practice such things deserve to die, they not only do them, but give approval to those who practice them. In other words, evil is just as evangelical as Christianity should be. And people who are practicing evil or hedonistic things or works of the flesh, they're recruiting others to do it as well because misery loves company. We know that to be true, and we have to spread the gospel. That is the most compassionate thing we can do for people all around us. I remember there was this time when I was 12 years old, I had this urge to attend Catholic Mass. I was born and raised Roman Catholic, but kind of around the middle school years, my family stopped going to church altogether. And so there was this little Catholic church about 5 or 6 miles from my home. And despite nobody at home wanting to join me to go to Mass that Sunday, I was determined. So I hopped on my bike and headed down there. However, when I arrived, after riding that 5 or 6 miles, I realized that I'd forgotten my bike lock and chain at home. And I naively thought to myself, it's just an hour and I'm at church. Who would steal from church? Like nobody steals from church, right? You got to be like the worst person on the planet to steal from a church. And, and then, however, so I went to Mass, and then after attending, I stepped out only to find that my bike was missing. Shocked and upset, I asked around, hoping that somebody had just moved it because I'd parked it right in front of the building, right by the doors to go in, which also was a stupid place to park it because that was right on the side where the main street was. So anybody walking down the street would have saw this unattended bike right there, knowing full well everybody was in church. But I asked around seeing if anybody had moved it, but it was clear my bike got stolen. The priest, upon learning my situation, had kindly offered to buy me a new bike. However, I was so consumed by anger and I was embarrassed and frustrated that I stormed off without accepting his offer. In my frustration, I even contemplated stealing another bike on my way home to replace the one I lost because it was a long walk home and this was pre-cell phones. And so I was just stuck. But thankfully, I didn't act on that impulse. Instead, I went without a bike until I eventually convinced my parents to get me a new one. I share this story to highlight a crucial point. that while we may have the best intentions to be compassionate, not everyone is in a place to accept it. In such cases, the most compassionate thing we can do is to give them space and time to process, allowing them to reach out when they feel ready for the support. But everybody handles adversity differently, and it's important to respect that. While the priest, I'm fully convinced, would have bought me a new bike had I, went with it. I was so just not in a happy place that I was not going to let that happen. Often, when we extend the hand to someone and get rejected, we take it personally and become offended, questioning why we even bothered in the first place. But the reality is showing the compassion is the selfless act. If someone isn't ready to accept it, though, we must understand that. We got to be patient and let them process things the way they need to until they're prepared to open up. Recently, in the community I live in, there was a devastating tragedy that affected a rather prominent family in the community. And there was witnessing the heartfelt outpouring of compassion and support in the community was truly remarkable. They had a prayer vigil, and hundreds of people showed up for this prayer vigil. The support on social media was beyond overwhelming. However, amidst this display of care, it became evident that the family really just needed some privacy to grieve and to heal. And while the desire to help is sincere and well intentioned, sometimes the best way to support those in need is just to respect their place and offer up prayers from a distance. Sometimes our desire to do something, anything, blinds us to the fact that in the moment, maybe the most appropriate thing to do is just to be still and do nothing. Just recently, speaking of compassion, I want to kind of go into a community spotlight here and talk about a place called By Faith Farms. I was scrolling through Instagram and I came across a video, a reel or whatever, that highlighted By Faith Farms, and it's a local place north of Nashville. And it has a really interesting story, and I'm just going to let the lady who started the story tell us about it a little bit.
My name is Lori Burkhead, and we are here today at By Faith Farm. We bought the farm in 2011, but it was about 3 years prior to that. My husband's a dentist. I worked in the office. I did accounting. And one night I had a dream, and it was so vivid and real. It was sort of like someone was panning with a camera, and I was just, I just saw the visual of a pan of a pond, trees, pasture, and it was beautiful and very green and in color. And at the end of the pan, a voice that just said, buy land, grow food, give it away, just like that. The dream persisted. It came back really for 3 years. My husband and I both got chills, and he said, I guess we got to find that farm.
And so that's exactly what they did back in 2007. They bought this farm, and it's turned into a rather large operation of volunteers that'll come out and work on it. Their mission in history goes like this. It said, Fed by Faith's mission is to grow fresh, nutrient-dense food while engaging local community and providing healthy food sources to those in need, particularly the disadvantaged. This initiative was born from the recognition of a hunger crisis in Tennessee, where nearly 1 million people, including over 250,000 children, struggle with food insecurity. Many of these individuals reside in what's called a food desert. I didn't even know what that is, and I had to look it up, but it's places where they just don't have access to food varieties, especially healthy food varieties. So they were lacking access to nutritious options. Originally envisioned in 2008 as a personal endeavor to address this issue, Fed by Faith has evolved into a nonprofit organization, By Faith Farm, which to expand its impact. By Faith Farm partners with local hunger relief agencies like Second Harvest to efficiently distribute fresh produce to those in need. The organization relies on supports from volunteers, donors, and the community members to fulfill its mission of providing nutritious food to the underserved populations. Through this collective effort, Fed by Faith has successfully met its goals and continues to make a significant impact on the community. If you'd like more information about them, or if you'd like to donate or volunteer, you can check their website, which is www.byfaithfarm.com. And I'll put a link to all that in the show notes for this week. I'm going to wrap up. I wanted to go back and let the Lori from the By Faith Farm kind of wrap us out here.
We've had so many more people that have joined and become part of the By Faith Farm community. The volunteers that come out, they are By Faith Farm, all of us together. because every time someone new comes to the farm, I think he or she is a godsend from, exactly what we needed or what I needed to hear. And we do that for one another. And the folks that come that maybe aren't believers, but little seeds are planted and faith is shared and grown. So we're growing a lot more here than food. We're growing faith. It is about the community of people sharing God's story with one another, encouraging each other. And that's what I hope to see, just a continuation of that.
Anyway, that's all I got for you this week. Thank you for listening and tuning in. Until next time, together we need to spread love, embrace truth, and we will walk in grace. The Weekly Bark.